This video discusses sensitive historical events and may contain difficult information. Viewer discretion is advised.
What if I told you more than 1,300 hate and extremist groups operate in America today, and many trace their roots straight back to the Klan of 1865? In this video, we reveal the stories left out of history books, how the Klan went underground and gave rise to new hate groups. We will show you how this violence is not history. It still threatens us today, in our communities and on our feeds.
Is the Klan really history, or is it still alive today?
Before we dive deep into hate, let's pause and get clear on what we mean. A hate group is an organized group that attacks or promotes hostility toward people because of their race, religion, ethnicity, gender, or identity. An extremist group holds radical beliefs outside the norms of society and often pushes violence or disruption to get its way. And a lynching is when a mob takes a life without trial. In America, that usually meant hangings, but it also meant unalivings, burnings, and beatings. These were not just crimes. They were public spectacles meant to terrorize and control Black communities. Now, here's where the story gets twisted. Watchdog groups like the Southern Poverty Law Center and the Anti-Defamation League have mislabeled groups, like the Nation of Islam or the Black Panthers, as hate groups. But think about that for a moment. These groups did not march through towns, attacking white, brown, or Native people. Their mission was survival and uplift. Feeding children, building schools, protecting neighborhoods. Compare that to what the church preached for centuries: that Africans were cursed by God, or what the U.S. government, Congress, and the Senate wrote into law: that Black people were property, less than human. Europeans filled books, claiming Africans were savages, not as smart as whites, and destined to serve them. So here's the question. If we call the Nation of Islam a hate group for teaching that the white man was grafted by Yaqub and made with the nature of the devil, then what do we call the church, the government, and the lawmakers who used their desires to justify slavery and lynchings? Because the truth is, their policies fit the very definition of hate. They unalived millions and destroyed generations of non-white people. Now let's talk about how hate started and why it still exists today. How the Klan rose after the Civil War and reshaped America.
The year was 1865. The Civil War had ended, and 4 million people who were once enslaved were now free. For the first time in American history, Black men and women could begin building their own futures. There was hope for land ownership, for education, and for the right to vote. But that hope sparked fear among the defeated Confederates. In Pulaski, Tennessee, a small group of ex-Confederate soldiers created what they first called a social club. It was not about socializing, it was about power. That group became the Ku Klux Klan, also known as the KKK.
Why was the Klan created after enslavement ended?
Because freedom for Black Americans threatened the old order. The plantation system was broken, and political power was shifting. White supremacy, which had ruled the South for centuries, suddenly felt under attack. The Klan's answer was simple: just crush their freedom before it could take root. Their goals were clear: stop Black people from voting and stop them from owning land. Stop them from building schools, and above all, stop them from being seen as equal citizens. The Klan called it defending American values, but in reality, it was a campaign of terror. Their tools were violence, intimidation, and fear. At night they rode on horseback in white robes and hoods. They burned homes. They punished men, women, and children. Anyone who dared to stand up was punished in public.
Did federal laws end the Klan or help it evolve?
At first, it looked like the Klan would be destroyed. In the early 1870s, President Ulysses S. Grant pushed Congress to act. The Enforcement Acts and the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871 gave federal troops power to arrest and break the Klan's grip. Hundreds of Klansmen were jailed, some escaped, and their leaders went into hiding. For a brief moment, freedom seemed protected. But hate did not die, it just adjusted. When the Klan scattered, other groups gladly stepped forward to continue the same mission.
Who were the Knights of the White Camellia? Ever heard of them?
The Knights of the White Camellia were a secret society of terror, born in Louisiana in 1867. They called themselves Knights. But their mission was clear: stop black men from voting and drive Republicans out of power. They operated in the shadows, working hand in hand with the Klan. Both groups spread fear using secrecy and oaths, and violence to keep black citizens out of politics. The difference was in name, not in purpose. Their tactics helped set the stage for open massacres. In April 1873, white militias carried out the Colfax Massacre in Louisiana. More than 100 black men were unalive while defending their right to vote. It became one of the bloodiest acts of racial terror during the Reconstruction era.
Did the White League try to overthrow a state government? And how does it compare to the insurrection of January 6, 2021?
The White League emerged in Louisiana in 1874. Unlike the Klan or the Knights, this group did not bother with secrecy. They marched openly with weapons, calling themselves the military arm of the Democratic Party. Their purpose was to crush black voting and drive Reconstruction officials out of power. To them, violence was politics. They staged massacres, broke up rallies, and terrorized entire towns. In September 1874, they launched their boldest move yet: the Battle of Liberty Place in New Orleans. Armed White League members stormed the city and tried to overthrow the state government by force. For several days, they controlled parts of New Orleans before federal troops restored control. It was one of the earliest insurrections in U.S. history, long before the world saw January 6, 2021. The White League showed that hate no longer needed hoods or secrecy. It could march in daylight with the protection of political allies and still call itself legitimate.
Who were the Red Shirts, and why did they terrorize voters?
The very next year, in 1875, a new group carried the same mission into other states. They called themselves the Red Shirts. Unlike the White League, which rose mainly in Louisiana, the Red Shirts spread through South Carolina, Mississippi, and North Carolina. They also marched openly, but their bright red uniforms made intimidation impossible to ignore. Their strategy was simple: show up where votes were being cast. They rode on horsebacks through towns, broke up rallies, and surrounded polling places. By showing up at political events with weapons, they sent a clear message: that casting a ballot could be met with violence. When federal troops left the South in 1877, Reconstruction came to an end, and the real backlash began. The Red Shirts did not disappear, they simply changed tactics. They gave up the Red Shirts and turned into politicians, police, and business owners, using power not just to threaten, but to deny black families work, homes, and credit. Without federal protection, white supremacist groups regained power. They attacked black voters and forced black leaders out of office. and terror became law. By the early 1900s, public lynchings replaced the Klan's night raids. The violence was no longer hidden, but it was celebrated. In 1916, Jesse Washington was lynched in Waco, Texas, before thousands of spectators. It was treated like entertainment, and families brought their children. Officials just stood by, and some even laughed as if watching a show. And in many towns, they had the support of sheriffs, judges, and politicians who looked the other way. That gave the Klan protection, because they all had the same mindset. And their message spread quickly across the South within just a few years. The Klan became the most feared force of the Reconstruction and the Great Migration eras. It was not only poor farmers riding at night. It was doctors, judges, lawyers, and even ministers joined too.
Did the Klan fight against the civil rights movement?
By the 1950s and 60s, the Klan had a new mission: to stop the civil rights movement at any cost. They attacked homes and churches. They dragged people from cars and beat them in the dark. They left bodies in rivers, swamps, and fields as warnings. Between 1954 and 1968, more than 40 black churches were bombed or burned across the South. This was terrorism in its rawest form. No leader was safe. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s home in Montgomery was bombed in 1956. He lived under constant threats and was followed by Klan sympathizers for years. Other ministers who marched with him were beaten, jailed, and attacked. Civil rights workers were hunted. In Mississippi, Medgar Evers was unalived outside his own home in 1963, after years of fighting for black voting rights. That same year, the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham was bombed. 4 young girls, Addie Mae Collins, Cynthia Wesley, Carol Robertson, and Denise McNair, were unalived while preparing for Sunday service. That bombing was just one of the many Klan terror attacks that struck Birmingham between 1957 and 1965. The violence escalated in 1964 during Freedom Summer. A black man, James Chaney, and 2 white men, Andrew Goodman and Michael Schwerner, disappeared while helping black citizens register to vote in Mississippi. Weeks later, they were found in an earthen dam. They had been unalived, with the help of local law enforcement working hand in hand with the Klan. History seekers. Their hatred had no limits. They attacked whites, immigrants, natives, and anyone who stood against their mission. That summer alone saw over 1,000 arrests of civil rights workers, 80 beatings, 35 church burnings, and at least 7 unalivings. Alongside the Night Riders were the white citizens' councils, the so-called Uptown Klans. They controlled banks, schools, and businesses. They fired black workers, denied loans, and punished families who dared to push for integration. By 1956, the councils had over 60,000 members across the South. The civil rights movement faced fire from every side. Through bombings, bullets, ropes, and lost livelihoods, they endured. Television cameras captured the hate, the fire hoses, and the attack dogs. The federal government could no longer ignore what was happening. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 were signed into law to protect black rights and end segregation. These new laws enraged the Klan, and they pushed back even harder.
What was the National Alliance, and why did it rise in the 1970s?
After the civil rights victories of the 1960s, white supremacy did not disappear, it regrouped. In 1974, William Pierce, a former physics professor, founded the National Alliance. His goal was simple: build a structured network across the country to enforce white control. The Alliance spread its message through propaganda, music, and books, including the Turner Diaries, a novel that became a blueprint for extremist violence. Chapters popped up across the country, pulling in thousands of followers at its peak. Now, let's talk about some of today's white supremacy groups. Did Trump give the Proud Boys permission to rise?
The Proud Boys rose to prominence in 2016, founded by Gavin McInnes. They claim to be a fraternal drinking club. In truth, they thrived on intimidation and street fights. They marched in Portland, Washington, D.C., and New York, often clashing with counter-protesters. Their mission was simple: defend what they call Western values. On January 6th, the Proud Boys played a central role in the Capitol attack. Led by Enrique Tarrio, Joseph Biggs, and Dominic Pezzola, the group's ultimate goal is to weaken democracy and secure a society where white men hold dominance. Donald Trump gave them a platform. When he was asked during a 2020 presidential debate to denounce the Proud Boys, but instead he told them to stand back and stand by. They took those words as a rallying cry, printing them on shirts and flags. After chaos erupted, listen to what Trump told the rioters.
So go home. We love you. You're very special. You've seen what happens. You see the way others are.
For extremists, those words were confirmation. And when Trump returned to office in 2025, he freed dozens of January 6 rioters, including the Proud Boys who had attacked the police.
Wow, can we say double standards?
The Proud Boys have also shown up at the southern border. They call it Immigration Patrol, claiming to protect the U.S. from migrants. Wearing tactical gear and carrying long weapons, they filmed themselves shadowing Border Patrol agents in Texas and Arizona. For them, immigration is not just a political issue. It is a cornerstone of their belief that America must remain majority white. They aim to stop migration and sideline black and brown voices. Today, the Proud Boys remain one of the clearest examples of how a hate group can thrive with political cover. They mix street violence with political loyalty. They frame themselves as patriots, but their mission is exclusion. And as long as leaders give them space, they will continue to see themselves not as terrorists, but as soldiers in a larger cause.
What do the Oath Keepers really want for America's future?
The Oath Keepers were founded in 2009 by Stuart Rhodes, a former Army paratrooper and Yale Law graduate. The Oath Keepers recruited from ex-military, the police, and sheriff's deputies. They dressed in camouflage and moved in formation. The group carried the image of a private army. Armed patrols appeared during the Ferguson protests in Missouri in 2014, following the police unaliving of Michael Brown. Oath Keepers stood on rooftops, claiming to defend local businesses. Across Nevada and Oregon, clashes with federal agents over land rights made headlines nationwide. The most infamous action came on January 6th in Washington, D.C. Stacked lines of Oath Keepers pushed into the Capitol, moving in a military-style stack formation, with hands on shoulders as they forced their way through the crowd. Federal prosecutors later revealed that weapons had been staged at a hotel just outside Washington, D.C. This cache was part of what they called a quick reaction force, ready to bring weapons and ammunition into the city if the call came. The Oath Keepers' mission centers on stripping power from Washington. Federal law was cast as the enemy. In its place, power was handed to sheriffs and militias, lifted up as the true authority. The vision they spread was of a broken America, where national laws could be ignored at will. In that world, non-white communities would be left without protection. Why does Patriot Front target protests and non-white communities? The Patriot Front formed in 2017, right after the violent Charlottesville rally. The violence in Charlottesville destroyed the image of Vanguard America, the hate group involved in the rally. 18-year-old Thomas Rousseau split off and built Patriot Front as a rebranding, with the same white nationalist message, but polished into a new package. Khaki pants, white shirts, blue masks, and flags became the uniform. Their choreographed marches appeared in Boston, Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C. By 2021, watchdog groups reported that Patriot Front produced over 80% of all white nationalist flyers, banners, and stickers in America. The mission was direct: remake the country as a white-only nation. Non-white citizens were written out of the future they imagined. On July 4, 2022, more than 200 members marched through Boston with flags and masks. Residents watched as police formed lines, not against the extremists, but to protect their exit. And this wasn't the only time police gave them cover.
Side note, coming from where I come from, in my hood we have rules. Don't start none, it won't be none. Don't start what you can't finish. I'm not the aggressor, but I fight with those who fight with me. If you start it, I will finish it. Don't write a check you can't cash. And one more thing, police, shame on you. So why? Are they protecting the racism? Oh, I just remembered why. Because you share the same racist mind. Now back to our video.
In 2025, Patriot Front members vandalized an immigrant-owned market in Fargo, North Dakota, leaving families shaken and fearful. They go where the call for justice is strongest. After the unaliving of George Floyd in 2020, Patriot Front members appeared at Black Lives Matter protests. They marched in mass, spreading propaganda, and looked for new followers.
How did police shield hate in the streets of Columbus?
In November 2024, a chilling scene unfolded in Columbus, Ohio. A masked neo-Nazi faction marched through the Short North neighborhood. Swastika flags waved, black uniforms, and banners made their message unmistakable. Police arrived in seconds. Instead of stopping the marchers, officers held residents back. That gave the extremists room to leave safely. To the community, it looked like protection, not enforcement. The message was clear: authority was on their side.
Who are the Boogaloos, and what do they really want?
The Boogaloo movement surfaced online around 2019. Wearing bright Hawaiian shirts, layered over body armor became its symbol. At first, it looked like empty jokes online. But behind the memes was a plan for violence. Soon, the talk of civil war escaped the forums and reached the streets. The Boogaloo Boys showed up armed at Black Lives Matter marches in Minneapolis, Denver, and Las Vegas. In Oakland, at the height of the George Floyd demonstrations, Stephen Carrillo targeted federal officer David Underwood. His driver, Robert Justice, was also convicted. Other Boogaloo members appeared at state capitals during anti-lockdown rallies, with weapons in their hands. armed men arrived at protests, hoping to spark clashes between activists and police. Their travel across state lines for demonstrations became a hallmark. Their mission is chaos, to collapse the government and build a society where communities of color have no protection.
Does the Aryan Brotherhood's power stop at prison walls?
The Aryan Brotherhood began in California prisons during the 1960s. Alongside the skinhead gangs, it grew into a cornerstone of organized white power. Prison walls became breeding grounds for recruitment. Drug trafficking and extortion funded the network. Young inmates were pulled into the ideology and carried it beyond the gates. And the reach didn't stop at release. The Aryan Brotherhood members control activity even while locked up, using coded messages and outside connections, and street gangs and substance networks. What started behind bars often fuels violence on the outside. Skinhead crews expanded that influence into city streets. Music, gang culture, and street fights became tools of recruitment. Did the Aryan Nation inspire the Sadistic Souls Motorcycle Club?
Yes, and the prison gangs weren't alone. Outside the walls, the Aryan Nations rose in the 1970s. They tied white supremacy to twisted versions of Christianity, calling it divine law to keep America white. Decades later, the movement found a new face in biker culture. The Sadistic Souls Motorcycle Club merged with Aryan Nations in 2012. They called themselves the militant wing of the cause. Their image was leather patches and motorcycles. But their mission was the same: carry violence into the streets, recruit the angry, and spread hate under a different uniform.
Who is the Hammerskin Nation, and why did they use music to spread hate?
The Hammerskin Nation began in 1988, born from the skinhead scene. Unlike the Klan's white robes or the Proud Boys polo shirts, their uniform was music. White power rock concerts became recruiting grounds. The lyrics preached supremacy, and their concerts turned into rallies. From there, chapters spread across the United States, and then into Europe and Australia. The network tied young fans into a global movement, with bands fueling loyalty and profit. Fights in city streets, graffiti, and propaganda followed wherever the Hammerskins played. It showed that hate does not always come wrapped in politics. Sometimes it hides in culture, rhythm, and noise.
Who was the Atomwaffen Division, and why did it spread fear?
In the mid-2000s, a group of young extremists built a network called Atomwaffen Division. Later, it rebranded as the National Socialist Order. This group was not about public marches or passing out flyers. They built small secret cells, they trained in camps, and shared violent propaganda online. Their message was clear: bring down the government through chaos. Members planned attacks, stored weapons, and praised Hitler as their model. Law enforcement arrested several members connected to real-world plots. Among them was Brandon Russell, founder of Atomwaffen Division, who conspired to attack the Baltimore power grid. Another member, Caleb Cole, organized threats against journalists and civil rights activists across multiple states. Atomwaffen showed how quickly online hate can turn into action. If white supremacy is the greatest domestic threat, why does this crisis keep going on with no real action?
Today, no one really knows how many extremists live in America. Experts estimate the number could be as high as 40% of the country. Roughly 134 million people, or 1 out of every 3 Americans. The danger is not only the ones waving flags in the street, but it is the people who quietly fund them, excuse them, or sit in silence while it spreads. In 2023, the Department of Justice and the FBI named white supremacist extremists the greatest domestic threat to this country. And the evidence is all around us. In recent years, Black men have been found hanging in towns across America. Robert Fuller was only 24 when he was found on a tree near City Hall in Palmdale, California. Just weeks earlier, Malcolm Harsh was discovered on a tree in Victorville, California. Another Black man gone under suspicious circumstances.
Next, let's head south. Georgia carried its own tragedy when Trevante Jamal Schubert Helton was also found on a tree near the Shoals Falls. And in Florida, Nevin Baker's remains was discovered on a tree in an Orlando park. In September 2025, 21-year-old Demartravion Reed was found on a tree on the Delta State University campus in Cleveland, Mississippi, leaving the community in shock and the family pleading for answers. On the East Coast, Manhattan, New York was shaken when Dominique Alexander was found on a tree in Fort Tryon Park. Then, in Albany, New York, the discovery of a 58-year-old Black man in June 2025 on a tree left the community searching for answers. Now check this out, history seekers. Officials ruled every case as self-inflicted, though families questioned those findings. But in a nation with a history of lynching, every hanging must demand questions and real answers. Families and communities demanded answers. But officials gave the same response. And we are not finished. It did not stop there. Now, let's talk about the truck drivers. In May 2024, in Vance County, North Carolina, 21-year-old Javion McGee was discovered leaning against a tree beside his truck. Authorities also ruled it was self-inflicted, yet his loved ones disagreed. And they are not alone. Across the South and Midwest, more Black truck drivers have disappeared, and families are left without justice. Mass shootings aimed at Black communities have claimed lives in schools, at local churches, grocery stores, and neighborhoods. Each time the news cycle says isolated. But when the same patterns keep showing up, it is not isolated, it is a crisis.
Why did the U.S. bomb a Black neighborhood in 1985?
The move's bombing showed how far the U.S. government was willing to go to silence a Black community. It was not about safety, it was about control. MOVE was a Black communal organization founded by John Africa in the early 1970s. They practiced self-sufficiency and spoke out against police brutality, systemic racism, and government corruption. By the 1980s, the group lived in a row house at 6221 Osage Avenue in West Philadelphia. They were outspoken, armed for protection, and often clashed with police and city officials. City leaders called them a public nuisance. MOVE said they were being targeted for exposing the truth about racism and police abuse. On May 13, 1985, after a long standoff, the Philadelphia Police Department, under the direction of Mayor Wilson Goode, the city's first Black mayor.
But we all know, all skin folks are not kin folks.
They dropped a military-grade bomb on MOVE's home from a police helicopter. Yes, a bomb on a U.S. neighborhood. The explosion caused a massive fire that destroyed more than 60 homes and left over 250 people homeless. 11 people were unalived, including 5 children and 6 adults. Firefighters were told to let the fire burn. Officials later called it a tragic mistake, but no one was held accountable.
Another story they don't want in the history books.
The move bombing proved that when black communities speak out against injustice, the government can turn its power inward. Nearly 40 years later, on October 4, 2025, ICE agents raided an apartment building in Chicago, storming through homes, separating children from their parents, and detaining families in the middle of the night. The raid left a trail of destruction. Doors were broken in, homes were torn apart. Toys, clothes, and family photos were thrown into the hallways. Witnesses say the sound of explosions echoed through the halls, and helicopters shook the neighborhood before dawn. Children were pulled from their beds, some without clothing, crying as agents zip-tied parents and forced them outside. Families say they were separated for hours, not knowing where their loved ones were. But so far, no one has been held responsible for the damage or the trauma left behind. So here are the real questions. If the government could bomb the MOVE organization in Philadelphia, break up the Black Panthers, silence Marcus Garvey, and target the Nation of Islam, wake up, history seekers? Then, don't you know, they could do the same to white extremist groups if they wanted to. So why is Congress silent? Could it be same? Why isn't the media treating this like the national emergency it is? And why does the world go quiet when it comes to black lives? This is why At Getting to the Roots exists. We refuse to stay silent. That's a wrap, history seekers, but wait. Discover more in the 400-year journey from Africa to America. We uncover the truth about Africa, African Americans, and American history, one story at a time. Thanks for watching. Peace and love.